Beneath forests, mountains and cities across Europe, the Nazis built bunkers so hidden and so horrific, their secrets remained buried for decades. These were not just military shelters, they were sites of torture, twisted science, lost children, and psychological collapse. What really happened in these dark places? Why were they erased from maps and history books? In this documentary, we uncover 5 of the most disturbing Nazi bunkers ever discovered, and the horrifying truths still trapped inside. Deep within the dense, shadowy canopy of Germany's Black Forest, concealed beneath layers of earth and thick foliage, lies one of the most chilling remnants of World War II, Bunker 17. Unlike the grand Nazi landmarks frequently explored by historians, this underground fortress remained hidden for decades, swallowed by time and nature. It wasn't until decades after the war that historians and explorers rediscovered the bunker's dark past, revealing disturbing stories etched in its cold concrete walls, stories of human suffering, betrayal, and unspeakable cruelty. Bunker 17 was originally constructed in 1943, at the height of the Third Reich's desperation to maintain control over their failing war efforts. The Nazi regime envisioned it as a communications hub, a nerve center where encrypted messages would be received and dispatched to coordinate military movements. But as the tides of war turned against them, the bunker's role evolved from a strategic outpost to something far more sinister. The bunker's entrance is cleverly camouflaged under a thick carpet of moss and pine needles, making it almost invisible to the untrained eye. Its architecture was designed for secrecy and survival. Reinforced steel doors, labyrinthine corridors, and a ventilation system that pumped fresh air but muffled all sounds, preventing any noise from escaping. Despite its initial purpose as a command center, Bunker 17 became a makeshift prison for political prisoners and members of the resistance captured by the Nazis. Within its claustrophobic depths, those who opposed the regime were subjected to brutal interrogations. The rooms meant for radios and command were repurposed into cold cells where prisoners awaited their fate. Sparse light bulbs hung from the ceilings, casting long, eerie shadows on the rough concrete walls covered with cryptic scratches and faded graffiti left behind by those desperate to leave a mark of their existence. Survivors' testimonies, gathered decades later, tell of grueling conditions, starvation diets, torturous questioning, and psychological torment designed to break the spirit. The interrogators employed brutal methods, often depriving prisoners of sleep and subjecting them to relentless questioning. The bunker's walls absorbed the whispers of betrayal, fear, and hope lost. Some prisoners were executed in secret, their bodies disposed of in nearby forest pits, while others simply vanished without a trace. The disturbing nature of Bunker 17 extends beyond the human suffering inside. There are rumors, supported by fragments of recovered documents, that secret medical experiments were conducted here. These experiments aimed to develop new chemical agents and methods to enhance soldier endurance, but many prisoners paid with their lives or permanent physical and mental scars. While concrete evidence is scarce, these whispers add a grim layer to the bunker's history, making it a place many locals prefer to forget. In the post-war years, Bunker 17 was sealed off by Allied forces to prevent it from becoming a relic of Nazi pride or a hotspot for neo-Nazi groups. For decades, the bunker remained forgotten beneath layers of dirt and forest growth. However, urban explorers and historians eventually uncovered its entrance, sparking renewed interest in its dark legacy. The interior, while decayed and crumbling in places, still holds remnants of its past. Rusted beds, broken shackles, and fragments of Nazi documents left strewn across its floors. Researchers who ventured inside noted an eerie atmosphere, as if the walls themselves carried the heavy weight of the bunker's violent history. They found prisoner graffiti, names, dates, desperate messages, etched in the concrete, like silent cries frozen in time. These marks tell stories of individuals who faced unimaginable cruelty but still clung to a sliver of hope. One inscription, written in a trembling hand, reads simply, "I will survive." The surrounding forest is not without its own mysteries. Locals speak of strange noises and unexplainable sightings near the bunker, adding to its aura of haunting. Some believe the spirits of the prisoners remain trapped within, while others dismiss these tales as folklore born from the bunker's grim past. Whatever the truth, Bunker 17 stands as a somber monument to the darker chapters of human history, reminding us of the horrors that can unfold when power is abused. Today, Bunker 17 is a protected site, its access restricted to preserve both the delicate ecosystem around it and the fragile remnants of its history. Historians continue to piece together its story, hoping to shed light on the suffering endured by those imprisoned beneath the forest floor. It is a place where the past refuses to fade quietly, a chilling testament to the human cost of war and totalitarianism. Exploring Bunker 17 is not merely a journey into a forgotten military installation, it is a pilgrimage through the echoes of lost lives and silenced voices. The bunker's walls tell a story of resilience and cruelty, hope and despair. It challenges us to remember and to learn, ensuring that such dark chapters are never repeated. Beneath the tranquil beauty of the Black Forest lies a hidden fortress, its disturbing history carved into stone and shadow, waiting for the world to acknowledge the secrets it keeps. Along the jagged coastline of Norway's northern fjords, hidden beneath towering cliffs and swirling mists, lie some of the most formidable and secretive structures built by the Nazis during World War II, the submarine bunkers. These enormous concrete fortresses, known as U-boat pens, were designed to shield the Third Reich's underwater fleet from relentless Allied bombings and to maintain their strategic grip on the Atlantic. But beyond their massive walls and steel-reinforced roofs, these bunkers harbor a disturbing history of forced labor, human suffering, and survival in one of the world's harshest environments. The construction of these submarine bunkers began in 1941, at a time when Nazi Germany's control of the seas was crucial to their war efforts. The location in Norway was ideal. The fjords provided natural protection, deep waters allowed quick deployment of U-boats, and proximity to the Atlantic made attacks on Allied shipping routes feasible. The most famous of these bunkers are located near the towns of Bergen and Trondheim. Their sheer size is staggering. Some could house dozens of submarines beneath roofs several meters thick, designed to withstand the heaviest Allied bombardment. Building these bunkers was no small feat, and the Nazis turned to an often invisible workforce. Thousands of prisoners, primarily captured Soviet soldiers, Norwegian resistance members, and political prisoners. These men were forced into brutal labor camps near the construction sites, where they faced starvation, exhaustion, and merciless overseers. The bitter Arctic climate only worsened their plight, with freezing winters, limited shelter, and scarce medical care. The prisoners were tasked with moving tons of concrete and steel by hand, digging foundations, and erecting the massive structures. Many worked chained together, their bodies weakened by hunger and frostbite. Death was common, and the work was relentless. Guards executed those who faltered or tried to escape. Yet despite the horrors, some prisoners found moments of solidarity and courage, sharing scarce food or whispering stories of freedom beneath the constant threat of death. Inside the bunkers, life was stark but functional. The giant pens allowed the U-boats to be repaired and refueled safely, giving the Nazis a strategic advantage that prolonged their naval campaigns. However, the secrecy surrounding these sites extended to the people working there. Prisoners who survived the camps were often kept isolated, with little contact with the outside world. Their suffering remained largely unknown until decades after the war, when historians and survivors began to speak out. Accounts from survivors reveal the psychological torment as well as the physical brutality endured. Many described the overwhelming despair of being trapped not only in the camps but also beneath the earth, cut off from daylight and hope. The oppressive atmosphere of the bunkers and the camps forged a unique, harrowing chapter of war history, one of industrial-scale cruelty masked by military necessity. Despite the war's end in 1945, the bunkers have endured as silent giants. Many were too robust to demolish, and several have been repurposed over the decades, some turned into museums, others used for industrial storage. Yet their walls still hold the echoes of the past, the stories of those who built them with broken bodies and shattered spirits. Norwegian locals sometimes speak of ghostly figures near the bunkers, the spirits of prisoners who never escaped the cold embrace of the Arctic. The haunting nature of these sites serves as a reminder that beneath the concrete and steel, history is not just about battles and strategies but about the human lives caught in the crossfire. Today, efforts continue to document and preserve these bunkers as historical sites, honoring the memories of those who suffered and died during their construction. Archaeologists and historians carefully examine the grounds, uncovering artifacts and testimonies that add depth to the chilling narrative. Exhibitions show the stark contrast between the impressive engineering feat and the tragic human cost behind it. The Nazi submarine bunkers in Norway stand as monumental testaments to the lengths a desperate regime would go to protect its ambitions, no matter the human price. Their hidden histories demand remembrance and reflection, reminders of how war's brutal machinery grinds down individuals, leaving scars long after the battles have ended. As visitors walk through the colossal halls today, the weight of history is palpable. The silence is broken only by the distant roar of the fjord's waves and the wind that sweeps through the mountains. The story of these Arctic bunkers is one of survival against overwhelming odds, a dark chapter where strength and suffering intertwined beneath a frozen sky. Hidden deep within the rugged terrain of the Czech mountains, a sprawling underground bunker complex was constructed by the Nazis in a desperate bid to develop advanced weaponry as the war began turning against them. Far from the battlefields, beneath layers of rock and forest, this fortress was intended as a sanctuary for some of the regime's most secretive and dangerous projects that would forever stain the history of science and warfare with their dark legacy. The Ore Mountains, known locally as Krussenhori, offered an ideal location. The region's natural caves and rock formations made it a perfect site for an underground complex that could resist Allied bombings and remain hidden from reconnaissance. Construction began in 1943, employing thousands of workers. But unlike traditional construction crews, much of the labor came from prisoners, Jews, political dissidents, and forced laborers from occupied territories, who were driven to exhaustion and death beneath the mountains. The bunker's purpose was twofold: to shelter the scientists and engineers working on Nazi secret weapons and to serve as a test site for experimental aircraft and rockets. At a time when the Luftwaffe was losing air superiority and the V-2 rocket program was emerging as a symbol of Nazi technological ambition, this bunker was supposed to be the cradle of innovation that would turn the war around. Inside the mountain, tunnels stretched for miles, connecting workshops, laboratories, and testing chambers. The engineers and scientists worked feverishly, aware that failure meant death or worse. They were overseen by SS officers who ensured the project stayed on schedule, regardless of the human cost. Prisoners were not just laborers but also test subjects in cruel and sometimes lethal experiments to test new fuels, materials, and propulsion methods. Conditions in the bunker were nightmarish. Forced laborers were housed in cramped, poorly ventilated quarters. Food was scarce, and medical care nearly non-existent. Many workers succumbed to disease, malnutrition, or accidents during dangerous experiments. There are chilling accounts of prisoners falling victim to explosive tests or being used as human shields during weapons trials. Despite the advances made within the bunker's walls, the project was plagued by delays, accidents, and the ever-approaching defeat of the Nazi regime. By early 1945, the complex was a chaotic sight: half-finished tunnels, abandoned machinery, and terrified workers trying to survive as Soviet forces closed in. After the war, the bunker was sealed off and largely forgotten, buried beneath layers of secrecy and rubble. Only in recent decades have historians and archaeologists uncovered its existence, revealing a haunting chapter in the history of Nazi scientific ambition. Excavations uncovered personal belongings, experimental notes, and the skeletal remains of some workers, painting a grim picture of life inside the complex. The bunker is a testament to the ethical abyss into which science can fall when divorced from humanity. The weapons tested here were designed for destruction on a scale never before seen, but the suffering of the people forced to build and test them was an equally terrible weapon. It raises painful questions about the cost of technological progress built on the backs of the oppressed. Today, efforts are underway to preserve the site as a historical monument and educational center. Exhibits tell the story of both the technological achievements and the human tragedies intertwined in the Ore Mountains. Survivors and their descendants have shared testimonies that bring faces and names to the countless anonymous victims. The story of the Czech bunker complex forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that some of the darkest technological experiments were not simply about weapons, but about the willful dehumanization of entire populations. Beneath the Ore Mountains lies a hidden history of pain and ambition, a stark reminder of what happens when power and science collide without conscience. Beneath the bustling streets of Berlin, buried deep underground in a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, lies one of the most infamous sites of World War II, Adolf Hitler's final command bunker. This hidden fortress was more than just a military installation. It was a claustrophobic refuge where paranoia, desperation, and the collapse of an empire converged in the final days of the Third Reich. The Führer bunker, as it was called, was constructed in 1944 as part of a larger underground complex beneath the Reich Chancellery. Its purpose was to provide a secure, fortified shelter for Hitler and his closest advisors during the increasing Allied bombardments of Berlin. The bunker was heavily reinforced, with walls several meters thick, equipped with air filtration systems, communication rooms, and living quarters. But within its concrete confines, it quickly became a tomb for the dying hopes of Nazi Germany. As Soviet forces closed in on Berlin in April 1945, the bunker transformed into a tense, oppressive cage. Hitler and his inner circle retreated into its dimly lit corridors, cut off from the crumbling city above. The atmosphere was charged with fear and suspicion, as those inside struggled to maintain a semblance of control while the world outside unraveled. Meetings were held in cramped rooms, strategies devised that no longer had any chance of success. Inside the bunker, life was grim and surreal. Hitler rarely emerged from his quarters, spending hours pacing, dictating rambling speeches, or ranting about betrayal. The claustrophobia and isolation took a visible toll on everyone, with many aides and officers reporting the Führer's deteriorating mental state. Suicides became common. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, poisoned his own family before taking his own life, while others took their own lives to escape the inevitable Soviet capture. Despite the grim surroundings, the bunker housed a complex network of communications and military planning. But as the days passed, it became clear that these efforts were futile. Supplies dwindled, morale plummeted, and outside the bunker, Berlin was reduced to rubble. The once mighty Nazi war machine was grinding to a halt beneath the city streets. One of the most haunting aspects of the bunker's history is the sense of betrayal and despair that filled its corridors. Hitler's closest followers either abandoned him or clung to their loyalty with blind fanaticism, while many others attempted to flee or negotiate surrender. The bunker was a microcosm of the Third Reich's final unraveling, a place where delusions clashed with harsh reality. After Hitler's suicide on April 30, 1945, the bunker was swiftly taken over by Soviet troops. The Allies chose to bury the site in secrecy, fearing it would become a shrine for neo-Nazi sympathizers. For decades, the location was covered by new construction, and only fragments remained visible above ground. It wasn't until after German reunification that the bunker's history became more widely known and studied. Today, the site stands as a sobering reminder of the dangers of totalitarianism and blind loyalty. Tours and exhibits near the surface educate visitors about the bunker's history, but the underground remains sealed and largely inaccessible. Scholars and survivors' accounts paint a vivid picture of the bunker as a place of intense psychological torment and historical significance. The ghost bunker is more than a relic, it is a monument to the collapse of a regime built on hatred and terror. The echoes of those final days continue to resonate, a chilling reminder of how power, fear, and fanaticism can trap even the most powerful in a self-made prison. As the city around it rebuilt and moved on, the bunker beneath Berlin remained a silent witness to history's darkest moments, a subterranean tomb for a vanquished ideology. It reminds us that even the grandest ambitions can crumble into dust, leaving behind only shadows and memories beneath the surface. Nestled within the misty Harz mountains of central Germany lies one of the most unnerving and lesser-known Nazi structures, Bunker 501. Officially labeled as a radio relay station, this deep earth complex was never found on any wartime map and was so well hidden that it escaped detection until the late 1980s. What archaeologists and historians uncovered beneath layers of earth and secrecy shocked even the most seasoned researchers. Not merely a military installation, but a site of disturbing psychological experimentation on children abducted during the war. Construction of Bunker 501 began in late 1943 under the command of the SS, using both military engineers and prisoners of war as laborers. Unlike other bunkers designed for command or storage, Bunker 501 descended vertically rather than spreading out across a wide horizontal layout. Each level of the bunker served a different function: communications, storage, security, and at its lowest point, the facility where the most unsettling activities took place. At first glance, the bunker seemed typical: reinforced steel, ventilation shafts, machine gun nests at the surface level. But as historians began exploring the lower chambers, they found rooms that had no clear military purpose. Small, windowless chambers with heavy doors, thick padding on the walls, one-way mirrors, and, most chilling of all, children's drawings etched into the walls, alongside names, symbols, and strange mathematical formulas no child should have known. Records recovered from a nearby SS archive suggest that Bunker 501 was used in a clandestine project called Project Morgenkind, or Project Morning Child. The program sought to identify and condition young children believed to have exceptional abilities, memory, pattern recognition, linguistic skills, through forced experimentation and psychological manipulation. These children were taken primarily from orphanages in occupied Eastern Europe, their identities erased. They were brought to Bunker 501 under the pretense of being adopted into elite German families, only to vanish into its depths. Inside the lowest level of the bunker, later named the Hollow Room by researchers, evidence of audio conditioning experiments was discovered. Primitive loudspeakers, bizarre light patterns, and electrified floors indicated that the children were exposed to continuous sensory stimuli, designed to break down their identities and reshape them. Notes recovered from a surviving SS officer detailed methods of sleep deprivation, mirror exposure, and mnemonic drills intended to turn children into what he called living message vessels, humans who could be trained to remember and repeat long encrypted messages without needing paper or devices. The most disturbing discovery came when excavation teams unearthed a sealed vault containing 6 child-sized bunk beds, untouched for decades. The walls were lined with lead insulation, and the door required specialized equipment to open. Inside, they found personal belongings: a doll, a rusted music box still capable of playing a haunting lullaby, and carved markings counting days, hundreds of them. No bodies were found in the beds, but historians believe several children died during the experiments and were buried in unmarked graves somewhere in the Harz. Others may have been transferred to different facilities, or simply vanished into history. Rumors persist among locals of ghostly figures near the old tunnel entrances, of children's laughter echoing through the trees at night, though no official explanation has ever been given. After the war, Bunker 501 was abandoned by the retreating SS and covered with rockfall, likely an intentional act to erase its existence. It was only by accident, during a routine land survey for a mining project, that the structure was rediscovered. The German government, upon uncovering what lay beneath, quietly sealed off the site. Only a handful of historians and specialists were ever allowed inside. Over the years, various conspiracy theories have emerged. That Project Morgenkind was never shut down, that some of the children survived and were used in post-war intelligence operations, or that remnants of the research were passed on to Soviet or American agencies. While no hard evidence supports these claims, the secrecy surrounding the site has only fueled public fascination. Today, Bunker 501 remains one of the most tightly restricted historical sites in Germany. Official tours are forbidden. Only fragments of documents and grainy black-and-white photographs hint at the horrors that took place. Yet for those who have stood at the entrance, the atmosphere is undeniable, an oppressive silence, as if the mountain itself mourns what was done within. The lost children of the Harz Mountains have no official memorial, no marked graves, no names etched in stone. Their stories exist only through the chilling remnants left behind, scratched into walls, scattered on rusted bunk beds, buried in the shadows of a war that consumed millions. Bunker 501 is their tomb, their prison, and perhaps the only witness left to speak for them. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?